Hey, may I call his name, Louis?
They called Mr. Geri Williams.
Raise your right hand. You swear affirm testimony you will give will be the truth and the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Have a seat.
Good afternoon, Ms. Williams. Can you spell your first name, please?
Geri.
Geri? And is that short for anything?
No.
Okay, so your full name is Geri Williams?
Right.
Okay. And where do you live, Ms. Williams?
Savannah, Georgia.
Savannah?
Can you pull that microphone down, please, ma'am, so we can hear you talk? Speak into it.
Let's see if that works better. If you need to scoot your chair in a little, it should move.
Okay.
Okay. And how long have you lived in Savannah, Georgia?
All my life.
And how do you know Leon Williams?
He's my son.
Do you have any other sons?
No.
And do you have any other children?
A daughter.
A daughter. And do you see Leon Williams in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am.
If you could just identify him by what he's wearing.
I guess there's a charcoal gray jacket. He has on a suit.
What color shirt
brown
is it?
shoes. I can't see the shirt from
Right.
here.
Okay. You can stand up if you need to, just a little bit.
I don't know if there's fuchsia or orange.
Okay. So a fuchsia orange colored shirt. Okay. Let the record reflect the witnesses identified the defendant, her son. And how old is your son, Leon Williams?
73. He should be, I think, 45 this year, 44.
So he's
44.
What's his date of birth?
12/9/1973.
And do you know Kente Williams?
Yes.
When was the first time that you met Kente Williams?
2016. I couldn't tell you what month because I don't remember.
Do you remember the time of year?
I think it was during a holiday, like maybe the 4th of July or something like that. I'm not sure.
So would it be fair to say, best of your memory, it was in the summer of 2016?
Yes.
And when you met Kente for the first time in that summer of 2016, where did you meet him?
I think Leon brought him to Savannah.
And how long was Kente and Leon in Savannah?
The weekend.
After that first meeting with Kente in the summer of 2016, when was the next time that you personally met him?
I think when they came back down for another visit.
When you say back down, are you talking about coming to Savannah?
Coming to Savannah.
And do you remember what time of year that was?
No, I don't.
And how long would that visit have been?
The weekend.
Weekend, okay. And at that time when you first met Kente, did you know that he had some special needs?
I was told when my son was going through the adoption.
Okay, so you knew about Kente's special needs prior to meeting him for the first time?
Yes.
And after that second time you met him in Savannah, when was the next time that you met Kente?
I think it was around Thanksgiving
And where did you have Thanksgiving that year?
in Savannah.
Now, was there ever a time that you came to Atlanta and stayed at Leon's house with Leon and Kente?
I think in 2017, if it was before that, I don't remember, but I know in January of 2017.
And did you come to the house at the Serenade Apartments at Glen Hall?
Yes.
And how long were you there for?
I don't know if I got there that Monday or Tuesday, but I left, I think that Saturday.
And why did you come to Atlanta at that time?
Leon was in the hospital.
And while Leon was in the hospital, were you tasked with taking care of Kente?
Yes.
And at that time, was Kente back at school, or was that before school resumed in January?
He was in school. I think. I don't remember.
That's
I think
okay.
he was in school.
And at that time, in January, when you were there in January of 2017, did you have any problems with Kente?
When you say problems, I mean, what do you mean?
Did you have any problems with him while he was at school? Were you ever called to the school at that time, in January?
In January, I don't think so.
And then you said you stayed from Monday or Tuesday to Saturday in January.
Right.
And after that, you went back to Savannah?
Yes.
And when was the next time that you came to Atlanta? Was that in April when all of this happened?
I think so.
So let's talk about when you came to Atlanta for a week in April of 2017 to watch Kente?
Right.
Okay. And how come you were coming to watch Kente for that week?
Leon had a meeting or a conference out of town.
So he was going out of town and Leon asked you to come and help him out, essentially.
Right.
What day of the week did you come down? Was it the weekend prior to that week, or how many days prior did you arrive in Atlanta?
I don't remember if I got there that Saturday or that Sunday.
So it was either Saturday, April 22nd, or Sunday, April 23rd.
Yes.
And what day did Leon leave for the conference?
I think he left Monday morning.
So you had either 1 day or 2 days with Kente and Leon, the three of you together.
Yes.
And then Leon leaves for the conference Monday morning, April 24th. Does Kente go to school that day?
Yes.
Does Kente go to school on Tuesday?
Yes.
And does Kente go to school on Wednesday?
Yes.
And what about Thursday, April 27th? Does Kente go to school? Okay. So, and Friday, April 28th, he goes to school as well?
Yes.
On Thursday, April 27th, did you have a conversation with Leon about Kente's behavior at school?
He called and...
When you say here, you're speaking about Leon?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. He
That's
called
fine.
and asked me to... I don't know if it was that Thursday or Friday.
That's okay.
But I got a call to go up to the school and take some shoes. He had on some shoes with cleats, and I was asked to take a different pair of shoes up there. I don't remember if that was Thursday or Friday. I really don't.
And did you in fact do that?
Yes.
Okay. At any time during that week while you were staying with Kente, did you have conversations with Leon about Kente's behavior in the home with you?
He asked me how was Kente, and I told him Kente was being Kente. And he didn't want to do his homework. Jesus.
Let me ask you this. When you said Kente is being Kente, what did you mean by that?
He acts out.
He was acting out?
Right.
You said acting out. How would he act out?
If you had him sitting down to do his homework, he wouldn't do it.
And this was something you personally observed with him that week?
Yes, ma'am. You would think he was sitting at the table doing homework, but he would be down bothering the dogs, and I would have to keep checking on him and tell him to leave the dogs alone. And the only way I knew he was bothering the dog would cry. So I told him, don't touch the dog or anything like that. He would slouch down in the chair. The only way I can put it is he would be obstinate. That's the only way I can put it.
Okay. And so you were telling Leon, he'd call for regular sort of updates.
Just to see how he was doing and how he acted in school that day.
And you would report on how he was doing.
What the teachers wrote on the papers that came home with Kente.
So let's move ahead to that Friday morning, April 28th. You said Kente went to school that morning, is that correct?
Right.
And when is the next time you saw Kente on that Friday, April 28th?
When they came in,
When you say they, who are you
Leon
speaking
and
of?
Kente came into the apartment.
And was it the first time you had seen Leon since that Monday, the 24th?
Yes.
Okay. Approximately what time of day was it when they both came in?
It was late evening,
And where were you?
sitting in a recliner watching TV.
So when you entered the home, were you sitting right there in that kind of living room area?
Yes.
And when Kente and Leon entered the home, how was Kente acting?
He was okay. They went upstairs.
And how was Leon acting?
He was okay too. He went upstairs. He told Kente to go take his bath.
Okay, I want to go back to when they entered the house briefly, okay?
Mhm.
You indicated that Leon was okay. How do you mean okay? What do you mean by that?
Disappointed.
He was disappointed. Was he upset with Kente?
He was disappointed.
Now you had an opportunity to speak with the police back in April of 2017, right? On April 28th of 2017?
Yes.
And at that time, didn't you in fact tell the police that Leon was upset?
Maybe.
And you said Kente was okay. What did you mean by okay when you said that?
He came in, he had his book bag, and he went upstairs.
And on April 28th, 2017, when you spoke to the police, didn't you tell them that when Kente came in the house, he was crying?
I don't remember,
You
but
don't?
I may have. I honestly don't remember.
Would you like to look at that transcript?
Yes.
I first witness room. I'm going to direct you to page 3, line 12.
I'm reading the text from my pocket.
Oh, do you need your other glasses?
Yes.
Are they in your bag?
Yes.
And where is your bag?
The opposite.
We can bring you your bag so you can read that. You may want to switch your glasses. Now that you've had an opportunity to look at that, do you remember saying that Kente was crying?
No.
But you did read that where it said that you
Yes.
said that. Okay. You just still don't remember.
Right.
Would you agree with me that your memory of what happened on April 28, 2017 was better on that date than today?
Yes.
Okay. So you said they entered the home, and what happened once Kente and Leon entered the home?
They went upstairs.
They went upstairs. Okay. Did you ever have a conversation at all with Leon? You hadn't seen him in a week, so was there any type of exchange between the two of you?
Just, if I'm not mistaken, how was he? And I just told him what went on, and I don't know if I got a call from the school and mentioned that to him. I honestly don't remember.
Okay. So they went upstairs, the two of them, and then at that point, did you go upstairs with them?
No.
At that point, did you hear Leon strike Kente with a belt?
No.
You didn't hear Kente screaming at all?
I heard him upstairs, but I thought he was doing what he usually does when you ask him to do something and he doesn't want to do it. He throws a tantrum.
So, did you hear any screaming, or was it something else that you heard?
It wasn't screaming, it was like a cry.
Now, at any time that evening, did you see Leon strike Kente with a belt?
No, I did not.
Now, after you heard what you described as like a cry, did you hear Leon and Kente talking at all?
Not really.
What, if anything, did you hear after the crime?
I think he was told to go take his bath.
Okay. At any point, did you actually see Kente in the bath?
I went upstairs, and Kente was in the tub, and I asked him why was he acting like that. And I think Leon was sitting on the toilet seat.
And what bathroom was this in?
Kente's bathroom.
Okay. When you said, why are you acting like that, how was he acting that prompted you to ask that question?
He was crying. He didn't want to take his bath.
How do you know he didn't want to take the bath?
The wash rag, his washcloth, his daddy was telling him to bathe himself and he wouldn't.
Okay. Did at any time Kente say that he didn't want to take a bath?
No.
Now, do you remember telling police officers on April 28 of 2017 that Kente said, I don't want to bathe, I don't want to bathe. And so I came back downstairs and left them up there.
I may have. I don't remember.
Okay.
I really don't.
And again, it would be fair to say your memory of what happened on April 28th was better on that date than today.
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you went upstairs and saw Kente in the bath, was Leon at all screaming at Kente?
Just telling him to bathe.
And how high was the water in the bath?
God. I think midway to his leg.
When you say midway to his leg, whose leg are we talking about?
Kente's.
Okay. So are we talking about, when you say midway, I'm not going to have you stand up, but are we talking about like the kind of I'll show you right over here. When you say midway, here,
Something's
right about in the
really
middle of the
in the
calf.
middle, like right here,
Okay. Should I go up or down from this
Down.
point? Down?
right there.
Right here?
Mhm.
So I'm wearing heels, but if my foot was flat, would that be about 6 inches?
Yes.
Okay. So you see Kente in the bath, then you said you came back downstairs?
Right.
And what did you do once you came back downstairs?
Started watching TV again.
Okay. So before you went upstairs, you were watching TV, and then you came back and just continued watching TV?
Right.
And what were you watching on TV?
It was a movie about a woman who was married and her husband and a young lady plotted to kill her dad.
Do you remember what channel it was on?
It was either Hallmark or Lifetime.
Did you say Hallmark
Yes,
or Lifetime? Do
yes.
you remember the name of the movie?
Strangers, a stranger in the house.
Stranger in the House. Now, after you came downstairs, did you hear anything out of the ordinary coming from upstairs?
No, I didn't.
Okay, you didn't hear a thing.
No.
At some point while you were downstairs watching A Stranger in the House, did Leon call for you to call 911?
He called me upstairs.
Okay, so What exactly did you hear him say?
He said, "Mama, come here."
Okay. And where was Leon when he said that?
He was in Kente's room.
And did you in fact go upstairs at that time?
Yes.
Okay. And where did you go once you got upstairs?
In Kente's room.
And what did you see when you got into Kente's room?
Kente was on the floor
Where was he in the room?
in his bedroom.
I'm sorry, that wasn't a clear question. Where in his bedroom was he? Kente, was he, like what part of the bedroom?
On the floor, just in front of the, I would say right here is the bathroom door, and maybe over there he was on the floor.
Me. On the screen in front of you, you'll see it states Exhibit 18. I'll just go to like second focus. Does that help this photograph? Do you recognize it? Would that help you show where Kente was laying?
If this is the inside of the bathroom, then maybe about right there.
So if you touch the screen, you can actually make a mark on it. So if you can just make a mark where Kente was laying with you can do it with your finger.
Is that the bed right there?
Is it kind of hard to
Yeah.
Let me bring the photo to you, so maybe it's easier to look at without it on the screen. I'll look that back up. Does that help you?
Yeah, because about right here.
Okay. And so to make sure that we're all seeing that, I'm going to put it back on the screen and then you can mark that area, okay?
Okay.
That states Exhibit 18 on the overhead projector. Now with your finger, if you could indicate where Kente was.
Can you bring the picture down a little?
Down.
Okay.
That help?
Maybe about right there.
Okay. So kind of in the middle of that carpeted area?
Yes.
Where was his head? Kente's head?
Towards the bed,
And where was Kente's feet?
pointing towards the bathroom.
And you indicate the bathroom is down here?
Right. Yes.
So that wooden portion is the bathroom?
Yes.
Okay, so you walk inside the bedroom and you see Kente. What is Leon doing?
Giving him CPR.
At that time, did Leon say anything else to you?
No.
At what point did he ask you to call 911?
When he couldn't get a response.
So you go upstairs. How long between the time you go upstairs and the time that Leon asked you to call 911?
Maybe a couple of minutes, because then I started giving CPR also.
So did you start doing CPR before or after you called 911?
I think before.
And the phone that you called 911 from, whose phone was it?
Mine.
Did you have it with you when you came upstairs?
Yes.
At what point did you notice the burns or blisters to Kente's feet?
When I started doing the CPR.
And was that the first time you had ever seen those injuries to Kente?
Yes.
Now, were you aware that on that same day, earlier that day, on April 28th, your son had a conversation with a friend about potentially terminating the adoption?
Objection. How, there's no foundation, there's no grounds for her to know this information.
Well, that's what I'm asking her if she's aware of it.
The person asked for it is asking for hearsay.
Well, how you can then she'd be aware of it.
I don't know if Leon told her about it, if, I mean, I can ask the question broader, if at any point she was,
You can ask her son told her about it.
yeah. At any time did your son tell you he was considering terminating the adoption?
No.
Those are all the questions I have for you at this time, Ms. Williams. Thank you.
Call it down.
If I can approach, Judge. Ms. Williams, I'm going to show you what's marked as offensive as 2 through 15. I'm going to ask you to look at these. I should flip through each one individually, please. Ms. Williams, you recognize these photographs?
Yes.
Ms. Williams, did you provide me these photographs on a flash drive
Yes.
some time ago?
Yes.
Are these photographs which you received from your son's telephone?
Right.
And do these pictures accurately represent the photos you got from his phone and provided to me?
Yes.
This time around, we're going to move into offenses 2 through 15.
And that is without it.
So we're going to post a few of them. We'll be with the jury. We're going to actually draw your attention to the state offensive number 2. What is depicted in this photograph?
What is the what?
What's in this photograph now?
Kente putting clothes in the machine.
We'll move forward to offensive number 7. Who's in this photograph now?
Leon and Kente.
So Ms. Williams, you told us that during the week of the 24th of April of last year, pretty much you were taking care of Kente.
Yes.
And your son was at a conference down in Jekyll Island, correct?
Yes.
And you were mentioning that during that week, Ms. Andrews had there were some problems. And did you have some problems with Kente's behavior that week?
Did I have some?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Because you mentioned that Kente was prone to tantrums. Is that
Yes.
correct? How often would Kente have what you call tantrums?
When he couldn't get his way,
Okay. And when he couldn't get his way, how would he act?
he would scratch himself, he would box himself in the face, he would hit the wall, and he would get something like a pencil or something, like he was going to, fight you with it.
Okay. Now, roughly how many of these tantrums or situations did you have with Kente that week while Leon was gone?
Monday was okay, but the rest of the week was a challenge.
Now, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, did you send Kente to school as normal?
Yes, I took him.
And during the week, did Kente have any difficulties at school?
If I'm not mistaken, I think I did get a call from his teacher that he was acting out and wouldn't listen. I think, I'm not sure, but I do remember talking to the teacher about his behavior.
Now, did you speak with Leon at all during that week?
Yes,
And so during that week, did you have any conversations with Leon regarding Kente's behavior?
just that he was acting up in school.
And of course, on one occasion, you told us that you had to personally go to the school.
Yes,
And I believe you said you weren't sure if that was on Thursday or on Friday.
right.
So on Friday, Leon returns home, and you told police that Leon, when he came in, he was a little bit upset.
Okay.
Does that sound about right, ma'am?
Yes,
Okay. And did it seem clear that he was upset at Kente?
yes.
Now, when Leon and Kente came into the house, did either one of them stop downstairs in the living room?
No,
Did Leon tell Kente to go upstairs? Did he take him upstairs? How did Kente end up going upstairs?
go take your bath.
So Leon directed Kente to go upstairs.
Right,
And this is immediately after you came into the home, correct?
right.
Now, did you go upstairs at that time?
No,
But you told us that after Leon and Kente went upstairs, you heard what sounded like maybe Kente crying out.
right.
But at that point in time, you didn't go upstairs to see what was going on, did you?
No, because to me that was a normal routine.
Okay. Because you often heard Kente, I guess, make a lot of noise.
Yes,
And the noise he made on that occasion versus other occasions didn't seem too far out of the norm, did it?
no,
But at some point in time, you did go upstairs.
yes,
And at some point, by this time, Leon and Kente were in the bathroom.
yes,
And by this time, Leon was getting Kente to take that bath.
yes.
And as you mentioned with Ms. Andrews, was Kente at that time, was he in the bathtub or out?
He was in,
Okay. Was the water running or not? Do you recall?
I don't think it was running.
Okay. And do you recall, you mentioned there may have been some water in the tub already.
Yes,
Now, when you mentioned that the water was a certain height up against Kente's leg, now was Kente standing or was he sitting in the tub at that time?
he was standing.
He was standing. Now, you told the police he was standing in the tub and he didn't want to take a bath.
Yes,
And he was sort of, I guess, as you said, being obstinate about taking a bath.
yes.
When you left the room, was Kente still standing up in the tub or was he
Yeah.
laying down?
He was standing.
He was still standing.
Yes.
And was he still complaining about having to take a bath?
He, I think when I left, he wasn't doing anything. His dad was telling him to bathe, and he wasn't doing anything.
Okay. Now, when you say he wasn't doing anything, you mean was he bathing?
No,
Was he, I guess, doing anything that you would consider part of the bathing process?
no,
So he was standing there, and you say his dad, you mean Leon, correct?
yes,
Leon was still trying to talk to him.
yes,
And then you went downstairs.
yes.
And did you ever come back upstairs anytime prior to when Leon called you and asked you for him?
Did I ever come up
Did
prior?
you come up before Leon said, Mama, come upstairs?
I may have.
Okay, well, let me ask you this then. You were just telling us that you saw Kente standing up
Right.
in the tub and Leon was talking to him, correct? So at any point in time, did you ever see Kente laying down in the bathtub?
No,
Okay. So did you ever see Kente at any point in time in the bathroom after you went downstairs? Or was the next time you saw him when he was
the next
in the
time I
bedroom,
saw
on
him,
the
he
floor?
was in the bedroom on the floor.
Okay. Now I want to ask you a couple questions. The week in which you were staying at Leon and Kente's home, who was there in the home besides the two of you?
Me and Kente and the two dogs.
Okay. And is that Hank and Misty?
Yes,
Okay. Now, did you know Leon's friend,
what friend?
Willie?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did Willie stay there?
No, he did not.
Okay. Do you know where he stayed? Do you know where he stayed?
At his home, I guess, at his home.
Okay. But Willie's home was not at Glen Hollow, at
No.
Leon's apartment?
No.
Okay. Now, I want to take you back. Let's talk about Leon. You were just telling Ms. Andrews that Leon's about 44. And he's your only son. Now, Leon's father, what's his name?
Leon H. Jones.
Okay, and does this H stand for Harvey?
Yes.
Just like your son's name is Leon Harvey
Williams.
Williams. Now, your son's, he's like almost a junior. So why didn't you name him Leon Harvey Jones Jr.?
His father wasn't around to sign the birth certificate.
Okay. So was Leon's father ever play a significant role in his life?
No.
Okay. And Leon, did he grow up down there in Savannah, where you're from?
Yes.
Did he go to college down there?
Savannah State.
Okay. And do you know, after graduating college, when did he ever make his way to Atlanta, do you know?
I don't remember what year,
Mhm.
but I don't know if he went to Augusta first and then Atlanta, or Atlanta, Augusta, then back to Atlanta. I don't remember.
Ms. Williams, after the incident on April 27th of last year, did you go to the hospital that night?
That night
Yes, ma'am.
with them?
Yes, ma'am.
No.
Okay. Did you stay at home that night?
Yes.
And when the police came, you spoke to the police that night, correct?
Yes.
And you gave them information that you knew during the course of time while Leon and Kente were at the house.
Yes.
Since that night, have you been able to, I guess, be with Leon?
No.
Link her.
Maria,
Ms. Williams, the photographs that Mr. Queen showed you state are defense exhibits 2 through 15. Those came from, you said, Leon's phone?
Yes.
So you weren't actually there when those photos were taken, is that correct?
No. No.
You weren't there?
No.
Okay. Now, you indicated that you may have gone upstairs a second time. Tell me about that.
I didn't, after I left down from Kente being in the bathroom, I didn't go back up there. I think when I went up there, the first time Kente was sitting on the floor taking off his clothes to go take his bath.
Okay. So, just make sure that I get it right. Just to clarify, so you said at one point Kente is taking off his clothes to get in the bath. Is that the first time you go upstairs that evening?
Yes.
Okay. So Leon and Kente come home. And Leon tells Kente to go take a bath.
Yes.
And what's the tone of Leon's voice at that point?
The tone a parent would use to tell a child, go take your bath.
So I think some parents might act differently, so if you could kind of describe the tone, that would be helpful.
Go take your bath.
Okay, so a stern tone.
Yes.
And then after he tells Kente to go upstairs and take his bath, is that, now you go upstairs for the first time?
Yes.
Okay. And is it that first time that Kente is getting ready to take his bath?
Yes.
And where is Leon?
He was standing up telling him to take his clothes off.
Okay. And is Kente taking his clothes off?
Sort of, kind of. You know how kids do. They pull the shirt down or pull the shirt up and they leave it. Take your clothes off, then you pull the rest of the clothes.
Okay. And then how long were you up there that time?
A few seconds, maybe a minute at the most.
Why did you go upstairs at that point?
Because Leon kept telling him to take his clothes off and he wouldn't. So I went up there to see what was going on.
So when you went up to see what was going on, was something out of the ordinary happening?
No, Kente was just crying.
Okay. At that point, did you have a conversation with Kente?
I don't know if I asked him in the tub or at that point, why are you acting like this?
Okay.
And he just looked at me. And I told him by screaming and doing stuff like that, you know, you're causing a problem.
Then you go back downstairs. How long is it between the time you come downstairs and the time you go upstairs for the second time?
Maybe 15, 20 minutes, 30 at the most.
So now we're on the second time you go upstairs. Is that the time you see Kente standing in the bath?
Yes.
Okay. How come you go back upstairs the second time?
Because, again, Kente was being obstinate. He was crying. He had a habit. When he didn't want to do anything, he would scream and yell.
Mm-hmm. And how long were you up there that second time?
Maybe a minute, two,
And where was Leon the second time?
sitting on the toilet.
And then you go back downstairs, and how long are you downstairs? how long is it that you're downstairs until Leon calls you to, says, come here, Mama?
Like I said, maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes.
Okay. So another 15, 20, 30 minutes? And at some point, after Leon tells you to call 911, does he tell you, wait, hold on?
No.
Okay. You don't remember him saying that to you?
No.
Were you aware that he said that, told the police that?
No.
Now, at any point when Kente walked into the house, what was he carrying?
His book bag.
Did you see him holding anything else?
No, I did not.
You never saw him with a belt in his hand at any point?
No, I did not.
Were you aware that Leon admitted to striking Kente with a belt 5 times that evening?
No, I was not.
Were you aware that Leon admitted to holding Kente under the water for 30 to 40 seconds that evening?
No, I was not.
Were you aware that Leon admitted to holding him under the water 2 times for 30 to 45 seconds?
No.
Were you aware that Leon admitted that some of the hot water caused the burns to Kente's feet?
No.
So you haven't spoken with your son about what happened that evening?
No. We were told by the lawyer not to discuss anything. So I did not ask any questions.
And even though, the lawyer told you not to discuss anything, you've still been in communication with Leon's attorney.
With his attorney?
We've spoken to him.
Just giving him, and giving him the information that he asked in regards to pictures.
And we've also spoken to. That's
Yes.
just customary. Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Geri,
Just briefly, Judge. Ms. Williams, you were told not to discuss the case
Yes.
with Leon, correct?
Yes.
By either phone or mail or any other method of communication, correct?
Right.
Because you were told early on that you'd probably be a witness in this case, correct?
Yes.
In my conversations with you, I asked you to provide me with information about Leon's background, correct?
Yes.
That you provided pictures and other items such as that.
Yes.
Did I ever direct you what to tell this jury today?
No.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
any further questions?
Thank you. This witness
Excuse me, you may step down. State may cause next week.
Thank you, Judge. Next we call Dr. Fraser Doe.
Raise your right hand. You swear affirm testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Have a seat. State your name.
Keisha Fraser Doe.
Please spell your name.
First name Keisha, K-I-E-S-H-A. Last name Fraser, F-R-A-S-E-R, space, D-O-H.
Good afternoon, Dr. Fraser. Could you tell the jury how are you employed?
I'm employed by Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. I'm actually an M-released physician at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta.
And if you could explain to the jury just briefly what it means to be released to CHOA.
So Emory is my academic employer, and they pay Children's Healthcare of Atlanta for me to work there.
Okay. And can you tell the jury a little bit about your educational background?
So I graduated from medical school and then did a residency in pediatrics and then did a fellowship in pediatric emergency medicine.
And other than your residency, is there any additional training that you've received in order to complete your duties as a pediatric doctor?
So after finishing residency, I did 3 more years in specialized training just for emergency medicine in children.
And are you board certified?
Yes, I am double board certified in pediatrics and pediatric emergency medicine.
How long have you been with CHOA?
6 years.
And has your time with them been exclusively within their emergency room department or in other areas as well?
I also moonlight in the sedation services.
Throughout your time with CHOA, throughout your entire experience, including your residency, approximately how many children have you treated that have suffered from drowning or near drowning symptoms?
I would say anywhere from 20 to 30 children.
And on April 28th of 2017, did you have the occasion to treat Kente Williams?
Yes.
And as part of your practice as a CHOA doctor, if that's okay for me to call that term, I know you're in release, but a CHOA doctor, is it typical to memorialize your findings in the treatment of any patient within medical records?
Yes.
And are they kept in the regular course of business at CHOA?
Yes.
And have you had a chance to review the medical records in association with this case?
Yes.
And do they appear to be a fair and accurate copy of the records that were kept and maintained regarding the treatment and care of Kente from April 28th?
Yes.
I want to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 92. If you could just quickly flip through those and let me know, is that a fair and accurate copy of those records that were created, kept, and maintained in regards to Kente Williams?
Yes, this appears very accurate.
Judge, at this time, we'd ask to admit into evidence State's Exhibit 92.
No objection. Judge, with that objection.
Dr. Fraser-Doe, at what time, if you recall, was Kente admitted to CHOA Hospital?
I will review the record to give you the exact time.
Okay.
It appears to be 8:54.
And is that AM or PM?
Yeah.
Now, tell the jury, if you're in this situation, is there any type of notification that occurs to the ER staff to let you all know that a child is en route if it is, say, these type of similar circumstances?
Yes.
Tell the jury about that.
So generally what happens is that the emergency medical services, the command will call either our transfer center or directly into the emergency department and say that we have a child coming with whatever their condition is that we feel like they will need immediate care when they arrive in the emergency department.
And was that done in Kente's case?
Yes.
And so when Kente arrived, were you waiting on him? Did they have to get you? Kind of explain that scenario when he first gets
So
there.
yeah, so when he arrived, we were actually waiting in one of our resuscitation rooms or bays and prepared for him to be there.
Okay. And what was his status coming into the hospital?
So coming into the hospital, the EMS team was actively resuscitating him by doing chest compressions as they came down the hall.
And what does trauma stat mean?
So trauma stat basically means an airway emergency with a traumatic injury.
And was that Kente's status?
Yes.
Okay. When they come in and they're doing chest compressions, what, if anything, happens once he arrives to your facility?
So at that point in time, the EMS staff would give a report and tell us what happened, and then we would transfer the patient onto the bed, continuing chest compressions until our staff is ready to then assess the patient.
And who does those chest compressions once the patient is transferred to the bed?
So in the emergency department, it can be a lot of different medical personnel. Generally, though, it's the medical technician or paramedic or an EMT professional who works in the emergency department.
At any point, did you or any staff member of CHOA take over chest compressions?
Yes.
And when did that happen?
So as soon as the paramedics stopped, we immediately resumed.
Okay. What is a primary survey?
So a primary survey is an initial survey assessment of the patient's medical exam, basically assessing the emergent functions to help us assess how injured the patient is.
And was that done for Kente?
Yes.
And what were the findings of the primary survey?
So the primary survey is actually done alphabetical order. So A stands for airway. So we would assess his airway and knew his airway was intubated with the endotracheal tube. We listened for breath sounds, and at that point in time we stopped bagging, which means giving him breath sounds through a bag, and to listen to see if we heard breath sounds without our assistance, and we did not. And then after that we stopped doing chest compressions, checked for a pulse to see if we could feel a pulse without our assistance, and we did not. Then we would go on and do what's called the disability portion of the exam, where we're looking for signs of neurologic function or dysfunction, and things like checking for reactive pupils, which were not reactive, and also looking for signs of movement of the body, which there was none. And then finally we do the E, which is exposure, and at that point in time we would just make sure that we had rolled the patient, looked briefly throughout the whole body, see if there was anything that was an obvious injury that we could address. Basically, the primary survey is to try to address things emergently.
And for the E portion, the exposure, did you find any obvious injuries that needed treatment externally?
So no obvious injuries that needed treatment externally.
Okay. And you stated you look for reactive pupils. What, if anything, does that tell you?
So reactive pupils tell you about brain function, and so when pupils are not reactive, it makes us highly suspicious that there is little to no brain function.
And the findings you said in Kente's were that there was
none. I can actually refer to my record and tell you what I specifically said. So I specifically used the words fixed and dilated.
Other than you being present to treat Kente on that day, do you recall any other doctors that were present to assist you?
Yes, so somewhere during the course of my evaluations, one of my colleagues, same training as myself, walked in to see if I needed any assistance.
And who was that?
Her name was Dr. Gong.
Okay. And during the treatment that you all were doing collaboratively in Kente, what, if anything, did you observe in his airways?
When I observed, it was an endotracheal tube in his airway.
And did Dr. Gong make any observations?
So she looked in his airway also just to see if the airway was obstructed, if we were having problems with bagging, and she did not relay to me that she noticed anything other than the intubation tube.
Did, as part of your regular course of procedure and conduct, do you communicate with the EMS personnel to see what their findings were?
Absolutely.
And was that done in this case?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did they indicate about water in the airways?
So they did have water in the airway, and in fact they had an unsuccessful initial intubation, and on the second intubation it was successful. And what they indicated was unsuccessful because of water initially.
Okay. What are the end tubes?
So endotracheal tubes are, people will call them ET tubes for short, but basically they're the tubes we put down in the mouth into the large airway to assist with breathing. It's basically the connector to your lungs and helps us to give you oxygen into your lungs when you're not breathing on your own.
And you stated previously that the EMTs would have already done that prior to the child's arrival.
They had already done it in this situation prior to the child arriving.
And is it your obligation to check to make sure that they're in the correct position?
Yes.
Okay. And was that done in this case?
Yes.
And was it in the correct position?
Yes.
You stated that you check for a pulse and that off of your initial primary survey, there was none. At any point during your course of treatment at Kente, were you able to regain a pulse?
No.
And once you were unable to find a pulse, what did you do next?
So we resumed our chest compressions and then ordered the nurse to draw up a medication called epinephrine.
And were you told by the EMTs whether or not they had attempted to provide Kente with that same drug?
Yes, they had.
And so why is it that you continue to utilize that drug?
So that is the one drug that we know that will help us stimulate the heart muscle and start it working again. And giving multiple rounds of this medicine can at times stimulate the heart muscle.
And approximately, if you recall, how many times did you administer that narcotic?
So the epinephrine or adrenaline, we gave 3 rounds.
And what, if anything, did you utilize to check if there was any pulse, or I'm sorry, not a pulse, but anything regarding his heart to see if his heart was actually functioning at all?
So when you're doing resuscitation, there's rounds. So after, which is a kind of a process where we do chest compressions, give medicine, stop and check a pulse at a certain time frame. So we would check that every 2 minutes, and so that's what we did. So we just do a round of chest compressions, giving epinephrine, check a pulse after 2 minutes. And so we would check on where the femoral area is, to check for a pulse. The other thing we did in addition was that we did what's called a cardiac ultrasound, or an echo of the heart, to actually look to see if there was any heart function.
Can you explain blood gas?
So blood gas is one of the blood tests that we will draw during resuscitation to help us determine if there's any reversible causes of cardiac arrest.
And was that done in this case?
Yes.
Tell the jury a little bit about that test and what certain ranges are for certain findings.
So the first number that we get is something called pH, which is potential hydrogen. The number ranges from 7.35 to 7.45 in normal healthy people, and above depending on what you've eaten that day. But generally 7.35 to 7.45, and in Kente's case it was 6.68. And then the rest of the blood gas has the number that's carbon dioxide, which is the bad air that we all breathe out. And in his case, it was 92. You want the range to be 38 to 50. The next number on that is the oxygen level, which is the good air that we all breathe in, and that was 32 for him. That is, the range is 25 to 40, but we were of course giving him oxygen. And then the next number on that is a bicarb, which for him the number is 11, and the range, it varies depending on the situation, but you would think like 18 to 20 is 18 to 30 is generally considered normal. The next number on the blood gas is something called a base deficit, and that helps you to determine about metabolic functioning and how much blood perfusion is getting to your distal extremities. And the number generally should be 0 to 2 and should not be super negative or super positive. For him, it was negative 27. And the next number is blood glucose, which was 172. The range would be 65 to 100 is normal. And so usually glucose is high in times of stress, or as you maybe have heard of in patients who have diabetes. The next number we checked is something called that's on the eyesight, is a number called hematocrit, and that is a percentage of the blood count. Usually ranges from 35 to 45. In this situation it was 40. Then the next number was hemoglobin. It's also another type of assessment of your red cell count. The number was 13.6. The reference range is 11.5 to 15.5. The next number was potassium, which is 6.2. The reference range is 3.5 to 5.5. The potassium will be a little bit elevated when you have concerns of heart muscle not working well. And the next number was sodium, 143, which the reference range is 135 to 145. And the final number is calcium, and the reference range, the number is 4.9, the reference range is 4.4 to 5.4.
Okay. I want to just quickly go through the ones that had abnormal findings in those ranges. For the pH specifically, you said normal was 7.35 to 7.45. With Kente's being at a 6.68, what, if anything, did that tell you?
So that tells me that there was a significant amount of hydrogen loss, and that there's definitely not a lot of perfusion to his tissues, oxygen. Also gives me information about the amount of time that he was without oxygen prior to getting assistance.
Okay. And so what, if anything, does it tell you about the amount of time that he may have lost oxygen?
Just means that it was a long time. There was not any specific number that I'm aware of that can tell us the amount of time, but we know it wasn't a short time.
When you say hypothetically, well, what time did you say that Kente arrived? I believe you said
It was like 8:54.
8:54 p.m.
8 p.m. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if give me one moment. If 911 was called at 8:18, so that's about a 40-minute difference from in time from when the call was made to when he arrives to you, would that be something you would expect to see within that range? Potentially.
It's possible.
Okay. When you say it's possible, was there anything about that that would be potentially concerning?
The lower the number, the more concerned we are that the patient was down. So it's hard to say.
Okay. Next, you talked about the carbon reading, the normal range 38 to 50, and his was at 92. What, if anything, did that tell you medically?
So that just shows us that he had a lot of what we call bad oxygen or bad air in his lungs, that even though he had been receiving treatment by EMS, they were unable to overcome.
Okay. And you explained the oxygen test and why that would be normal. His bicarb reading, why would that be so low medically?
So that's all about perfusion. So if you're not getting enough oxygen to the rest of your body, then that's going to be a low number. That's the number that we help us to figure out if you're not getting enough, if your blood vessels and organ vessels are not being perfused well.
And your base deficit testing coming up as a negative 27, where the range typically should be 0 to 2. What, if anything, does that indicate to you medically?
So in his situation, it actually indicates the same thing, perfusion. So in some situations, it could be associated with dehydration, but in his situation, it's perfusion.
And when you say perfusion, what does that
Meaning he
mean?
wasn't getting enough blood perfused to the rest of his body.
Okay. And then finally, for the blood glucose, you did say that it could be symptomatic of diabetes, correct? Like somebody may have a super high reading if they're diabetic. Elaborate a little bit more on the other factor you talked about. If a body were to undergo a large amount of stress, why would that cause that spike that you were talking about?
So glucose is one of the hormones that our body puts out when we are in a stressful situation. So it actually does go up, usually into the high 100s, maybe low 200s, but not usually higher than that, without any other situations involved for patients who are stressed. So we commonly see this in patients who have a cardiac or respiratory arrest.
During your examination, you noted that Kente was hyperthermic. Is that correct? Can you explain to the jury what does hypothermic mean?
So hyperthermic is basically, he was warm, he was febrile. So when we checked his temperature was, I'll tell you the number exactly, 39 degrees Celsius, which translates into, I believe, 102 Fahrenheit, but I don't know the calculation too quickly off the top of my head.
And why was that a red flag or something that seemed notable to you?
So generally, when we have patients who've had a cardiac arrest, they're usually cooler as opposed to warmer than normal. And so normal for us would be anywhere between the ranges of like 36.36 Celsius to 37 Celsius, 37.9 Celsius, where he was 39.
Okay. And in your communication with the paramedics, there was no, let me strike that, was there any indication of anything that they did that would have caused Kentay's body temperature to rise or increase?
No.
Could potentially submersion in warm water for extended periods of time contribute to a higher body temperature?
Yes.
Any medications that you provided that would cause a temperature spike in his body?
No.
Okay. Let's talk about rigor. Part of your medical training, do you receive training in signs of rigor?
Yes.
And in your experience as a doctor, have you seen signs of rigor?
Yes.
Tell the jury what, if anything, strike that, what is rigor?
So rigor is basically stiffening of the muscles of the body. Once again, when you're not having perfusion to the muscles, and it has to do with the amount of time generally that people are not alive, so that their heart is not pumping blood to the rest of their body. Generally, you see rigor at 2 hours post loss of cardiac function.
Okay. And is there any variance in that based on the age or the size of a person?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So standard would be 2 hours that you start to see signs of rigor. Okay. And if you could just say yes or no.
Yes,
no,
sorry.
Okay. And we previously talked about that, again, Kentay arrived at 8:54, correct?
Yes.
Okay. During your examination, I know that you previously stated during your primary survey that you didn't see any injuries to treat per se, but in your observations, did you observe injuries to Kentay's body?
Yes.
And I want to show you what's been previously marked as Space Exhibits 21 through 29. And if you don't mind flipping through these, do these appear to be a fair and accurate depiction of how Kentay appeared when you were treating him back on April 28th of 2017?
Yes, except the blisters on the feet appeared intact in my recollection.
Okay, and can you explain to the jury, and let me put that up actually, in regards to Space Exhibit 27, when you say that those blisters were intact, tell them what you mean.
So he has blisters on the dorsum on the top of his foot, which look to be like partial thickness burns to the top of his foot. And my recollection is that the blisters were actually filled still with fluid when I initially saw him. But that's obviously their blisters, so they can burst.
And does that apply also to 26?
Yes.
Okay. And how would you describe the sensitivity, if you will, of those blisters? Are they pretty easy to rupture?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Let's talk about those injuries to his feet. Were you able to determine if those injuries were the age of the injuries?
Generally, when you see blisters that are intact, they're fairly recent from a burn. So a partial thickness burn, usually it's the first day or two of blisters.
And as a pediatric emergency room doctor, are you also trained to look for signs of potential physical abuse or sexual abuse?
Yes.
Okay. What, if anything, in seeing burns on the, you said, dorsal side of the foot, what, if anything, based on your training and experience, does that indicate potentially to you?
So that makes me concerned for non-accidental or inflicted trauma.
And why is that?
So generally when people accidentally burn themselves, they would step into something, and so you would expect there to be burns on the plantar surface or bottom of the foot, not on the top of the foot.
And did you see any injuries to the plantar bottom side of Kente's feet?
No, I did not.
And were there any linear burn marks to indicate that perhaps there was a submersion versus this type of injury that we see?
Not that I saw.
Okay, and can you explain that to the jury and what a linear marking would look like in the burn versus this type of injury?
So basically you would see a clear area where there was burn and there was non-burn. And so like if you were to step into hot water, for example, the bottom of your foot could be burned, and all depending on how high the water is, there could be part of the top of your foot that was actually burned, but all of it you would assume would not be burned, or you would pull your foot out and there would be a clear demarcation of burn versus non-burn area.
As part of your work duties at CHOA, are you able to access prior medical records of patients that come to see you?
Yes.
And were you able to research that particularly for Kente?
Yes.
And was there any history of seizures for Kente?
No.
I want to read to you a list of medications, and if you could just briefly describe what those are used to treat for.
Okay.
I'm going to butcher all of them, so please correct me. Loratadine?
So loratadine is the same as similar to Claritin, and it's a medicine for seasonal allergies or hay fever. Sometimes people say sinuses.
Olanzapine?
Olanzapine is an antipsychotic, which is used for patients for more than just schizophrenia. Is often used in pediatric patients for aggressive behavior.
Strattera?
Strattera is medicine for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
And clonidine?
Yeah, clonidine is a medicine that's traditionally is a medicine for high blood pressure, but in pediatrics it's often used as an adjunct for ADHD or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and also used for sleep.
And I'm showing Stacy Exhibit 48 and 52 and 49 regarding the medications you just described. None of those medications are for seizures, correct?
No.
Okay. On the day that you were treating Kente, did you have the occasion to speak with his father?
Yes.
Tell us about that interaction. First off, how would you describe his demeanor?
So he was visibly upset, out of the periphery because he was in the hall, which is generally what we have parents do initially, resuscitation. He, of course, was with our chaplain, visibly upset.
And at any point, did that demeanor change that you observed?
There was at times where he was agitated.
Okay. And did you have any conversations with him?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So my initial conversation with him was to tell him that his son had no pulse and that we were going to stop resuscitative efforts. And at that point in time, he became more upset and almost slid out of the chair. I believe someone caught him.
Okay. And once he almost slid out of the chair, what, if anything, did the staff do?
I believe that someone caught him and tried to help him get back into the chair. And then we talked about Generally, we like to have parents in the room when we start resuscitative efforts. So we discussed that with Dad. I discussed that with Dad. Asked him when he would be ready to come into the room so that we could actually start doing CPR on his son.
And at any point, what if any response did you get to that? Did he actually enter the room for you to call it? Okay. And are you the one who called the time of death?
Yes.
I want to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 93. Do you recognize what this document is?
So yeah, this is the death certificate.
And on there is your name and the time of death that you pronounced for Kente Williams present on that document.
I do not see my name. Maybe up higher though. Yeah, so I see my name, yes.
And what was the time of death?
9:04.
And that's PM, correct?
Yes, 9:04 p.m.
Judge, we'd ask to introduce in the evidence State's Exhibit 93, self-authenticating death certificate of Kente Williams.
No objection.
Any good without it?
During the time that you were either treating Kente or in the area where the defendant was, did you hear him tell anybody about what happened that night?
Yes, so he relayed to Dr. Gong that the child had been taking a bath and he had found him down in the bathtub.
And did you hear him make any other statements about what occurred? What if anything did he say about Kente's history of having seizures, or if Kente had a seizure?
So what was relayed to me and what I specifically got from him was that he did not have a seizure disorder.
Okay. At any point, did you personally, after calling the time of death, tell the defendant to stay at the hospital?
Yes.
Tell us about that conversation.
So after calling time of death, I actually went to get a little bit more history and to explain to Dad the rest of the process. He was in discussion with, I believe at the time, the chaplain and some security personnel about leaving, and we all encouraged him that it would be very important for him to stay.
And did you hear him make any statements about defects?
I did not.
Okay. And after you, along with others, told the defendant to stay at the hospital, what if anything happened?
The defendant left the hospital.
And do you know where he went?
I do not.
And do you see the individual that you brought into the room when you pronounced Kente dead sitting here today?
Yes.
And if you could point to him and briefly describe what he has on?
Yes, so the man in the black jacket and red shirt.
Let the record reflect this witness has identified the defendant. Nothing further.
Roger, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Doctor.
Hello.
I want to ask you, make sure my timeline is right. I believe you've told us that Kente came into the ER at approximately, did you say 8:54?
Yes.
Unless I'm mistaken, you pronounced him deceased at, was that 9:04?
Yes.
So efforts weren't really, it wasn't a prolonged, protracted series of efforts done in the ER.
No.
And from what you told us, it sounds as though by the time Kente arrived, there were obvious clinical signs that Kente had suffered full cardiac arrest and was likely deceased.
Yes.
And of course, obviously that's a hard thing for you as a physician treating a young child, to see a child come in that state. Is that correct?
Yes.
Because you mentioned that even though all the signs pointed towards Kente being deceased when he arrived. Efforts were done to try to resuscitate Kente.
Yes,
He was bagged. He was given epinephrine. He was given, I guess, everything at your disposal in order to try to get his heart going.
yes,
But you never found a heart rate, correct?
that is correct.
You never found a pulse.
That is correct.
I know you said his eyes were dilated.
Fixed and dilated, yes.
When you say fixed, meaning that there was,
So if you shine a light in someone's eyes, they react. They get smaller. So fixed means they do not react.
now you were telling us about some measures, some clinical measures based on some stats. You mentioned his hydrogen levels, particularly. And it was clear that his level was, I believe, 6.88.
I think it was actually 6.68.
6.68. And normal is, I believe, said 7.35 to 7.8, 7.4.
So 7.33 to 7.45, roughly.
Which was a clear indicator there was very little oxygen in his bloodstream.
Yes.
Now, Ms. Racine just asked you about that. Because based on that along with, actually, let me say, that along with a couple of other factors, it was your opinion that he'd been deceased for some time.
Yes.
And you said a long time versus a short time, correct? And Ms. Racine asked, I guess she was trying to ask you, what's a long time? Minutes, hours?
That's hard to say
Okay. Now, why is it hard to pinpoint?
because we don't have enough information as doctors able to say those things. There's people who have been found down for 5 minutes and could have similar information, so it's hard to say
Okay.
because you don't know exactly when, but
Because in this case, we understand that at least 911 and EMS have been rendering and been involved in the situation for roughly 40 hours, 40 minutes. So you said that his death could be somewhere within there, correct?
so from my understanding, when the EMS were on the scene, they never had a pulse either, so
So his death could easily be within that 40-minute window, correct?
before EMS arrived.
Yes.
Yes.
But then Ms. Racine asked you about rigor. And you would tell us about rigor typically setting in around 2 hours. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, is that a generalized figure for the average population, or is that a figure particularized to 10-year-old African-American boys?
That is what we know for patients in general.
Okay. And you mentioned 2 hours, so did he die at 7:04?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Is that something you can tell us definitively?
So that is not my expertise.
Okay. Now, we say it's not your expertise. You're a physician, correct?
But I'm a pediatric emergency physician. I deal with living.
Correct. And generally, rigor is something which is a concern for those who deal with the dead.
That is correct.
Okay. So that figure you gave us, 2 hours, that's basically just a common figure in the literature.
So that is what we're taught in medical school.
Okay. And it's not based upon your experience of seeing X number of deceased children that you can definitively say died 2 hours ago.
It is based on what I was taught in medical school.
Now, you told us though about one measure which seems counterintuitive, and that's that body temperature. Because typically when someone passes, they start to cool, is that correct?
That is correct.
But in this case, Kente was generally pretty warm.
That is correct.
And you mentioned 102. Is that a fever?
So temperatures greater than 100.4 would be considered a fever.
Okay. 98.6 was usually standard, correct? 104 is a fever, correct?
That is correct.
And we're just shy of that by a couple degrees.
That is correct.
Now, based on your observations, is there any explanation for that?
I don't know. I don't know what the explanation is.
I know Ms. Racine asked, could he have been underwater? But based on your observations and what you were able to do through that limited time, can you give us a definitive answer? Why was he warm versus being cold and cooling as you would expect?
Definitely he could have been in warm water, but I don't have an explanation.
Okay. And in particular, let me ask, that 39-degree temperature, how was that obtained?
One moment. So generally it would be obtained rectally by a rectal thermometer. I do not see right now the documentation for that. I can, if you don't mind waiting, look and confirm that, but 90% of the time that's what we do.
Okay. And when you say you're not sure, basically, you have to flip through all those pages of medical records.
Exactly.
To give
But
you-
generally in someone who's deceased, they can't open their mouth, we wouldn't signate their arm. The rectum would be the place we would put it.
Nothing further, thank you.
Any reader?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, Doctor. You're excused. You may step down. Ladies and gentlemen, please retire to the jury room for a few minutes. Let's take up the photograph.
Yes, Judge. Judge, state is, I believe the defense is objecting to the number of photographs the state is trying to introduce. I don't know if the court wants me to run through them just to give a rationale as to why we want to utilize this amount and the reasoning for them. But in essence, the photographs that we intend, would you like to do? The defense has already reviewed them. But we have them broken into different portions of the testimony we'd like to cover, including the overall examination of the child, the clothing that was obtained, the belts that were obtained, the matching of those belts to the injuries found on the child's body, the injuries to the child's feet, and the internal bruising. That is the only internal injury that we are trying to show. It's only 2 photographs, it's the last 2 in that packet, Judge. As to bruising that may not have been observed externally, but once the doctors did cut into Kente's skin and flip it back, they were able to see that bruising to his shoulder, which we believe is relevant to the drowning of Kente.
Mr. Queen, what do you object to?
Oh, let's see, Judge, I guess we should take maybe in sections. In the first section, you have, I guess, looks like states 100 through 121. These are primarily pictures depicting the external examination of Mr. Williams, and they show the body injuries, which are primarily duplicative of states exhibits 21 through 29. We've already had 9 pictures showing externally young Mr. Williams. I'll put those right here for the court. 100, I do understand. 100, that's the identification photo standard, which is, I assume Dr. Gallup is going to say, this is the identification photo, this is the case number from the cabinet representative's office. We have a lot of photos of the feet, we have a lot of photos of the torso, already admitted in the evidence. In the package, you have the 40, 100, 121. Generally, you have close range and mid-range photos, commonly in the same areas. I'll give you a chance to look through those, and I'll move on to the next set.
Other than the number of photos, is there any objection? I don't really see anything particularly offensive about any of them.
They are duplicative of the ones earlier introduced, Judge, which have 40 on the bench.
But I assume these are the ones Dr. Gallup did, rather than others.
The others were ones from the hospital, correct?
I don't see any problem with those, 100 through
121.
121. Assuming Dr. Gallup knew about it. Okay,
126 to 150, those are,
well, we got 122. Sure. And
no objection to those, Judge.
122 to 125, no objection.
Those are closed, no objection.
Admitted without objection.
126 to 150, those are the belt photos. And generally what we have is every picture from every belt in which they took over to the medical examiner's office being photographed. And then we have what is believed to be the belt which Dr. Gallup is going to say more than likely inflicted the injuries. We have far, mid-range, and close-up photos of that one belt. I have no objection with those.
No objection to the belts.
But all the rest of them, they lack any relevance. I'm not questioning what Dr. Gallup's findings as to which belt. He and I have had this discussion some time ago. We have all these cloth belts, which we know have no relevance to this case. And just because, actually Dr. Gallup didn't exactly do the examination himself, he had one of his investigators primarily do the examinations, and he oversaw it.
So you have no objection to what?
There, let's see, particularly which ones we would stack. I believe Dr. Garrett is going to say that he used the belt as 126, based upon comparing that to 139 and or 140. 139, 140, and 141, pretty much they are long range, mid range, and close range of the same belt. In comparison for the loop marks.
So you have any objection to 139 and 140?
No.
Okay, so 126, 139, and 140 are admitted without objection.
Judge, may we be heard as to the relevance of the others?
Okay.
Judge, state's position is that there was a scientific method utilized for the ME's office to make the determination as to which belts could potentially have matched the injuries. And so in a thorough examination, what they did was take all of the belts that were introduced in the state's exhibit, but all the belts that were introduced as part of that one, and measured them, and then made a determination as to whether or not those could have caused injuries. It'll be a very quick portion of the testimony. However, we do feel it's relevant because they've been introduced, because they were all collected, and because the ME's office also used them as part of their testing to exclude them as being the source of those injuries. It's nothing that I think that would prejudice the defendant. We do think it's relevant because it was part of their determination as well as
I
part of
don't
the
see it hurts anything, I'll admit all of them. So I'll admit the rest of them over objection.
No objections for 151 and 155, Judge.
51 to 155,
Yeah.
admitted without objection.
Then finally,
Wait just a minute. There's also 156 and 157.
no objection, 156, 157, Judge.
All right, 151 through 157, admitted without objection.
Then finally, we get 158 and 159. 158, 159 are the injury to the shoulder. They're just different ranges of the same injury.
What's the objection?
So those two are duplicative of each other. Obviously, 158, 159, those are internal autopsy photographs. Those are generally the ones in which courts recognize care should be taken before allowing the admission.
They do look like the same thing. What's the state's?
I got no problem with 158 or 159, just not both.
Judges, regarding the orientation of the photographs, that reveals slight differences in what they are showing, so that's the reason why those two were chosen.
Well, I don't see any difference really. One's a little closer. So,
Judge, if I may look at them, and I can,
I'll have the state pick one, which I'll admit without objection. Okay, is that it? Let's take, how long you want, 5 minutes recess?
That's fine, Judge.